So the idea to go to Kyrgyzstan actually came from a trip I did back in 2017. And then following that I thought, wow, it would be a great opportunity to go back there and do some research there. So I spoke to Sam and he was just as excited about it as I was.
We were both really keen to do something a little bit more with our dissertation and not just spend it based on a computer or doing a kind of a smaller project. We wanted to make an opportunity of doing something a bit bigger and a bit broader. Glaciers in Central Asia are some of the most threatened in the world, so having focused on that topic in our course, for the actual practicalities of organising an expedition, it just fit the bill really well.
So we narrowed it down to one glacier called the Fedorovich Glacier. And we chose this glacier because it was actually ideal for our research. It was pretty flat, pretty smooth, so few crevasses, perfect size and really easy to access.
And I guess the next step was to build the team from just Alex and myself to a team of 5.
We picked a medic because we needed somebody who was going to be able to provide first aid. We picked someone in the first year who would be able to take their experiences and apply it to research projects later on in their university career. And someone who had a lot of experience in past mountaineering who'd be able to kind of share their skills with us and keep us safe on the glaciers.
Obviously I wanted to see the research project succeed. That was one of the main reasons why I was there. I was there to assist Alex and Sam. But for myself, my own personal aim was making sure that all 5 of us made it down safely. That was the highest priority above anything else as far as I was concerned.
I'd just been looking at research placements, places which were just working in an office all summer, and it's not really my thing. Like, I love being outdoors and mountaineering and stuff, so saw that and just thought it sounded like an amazing opportunity.
I sort of just wanted to test my own skills really of mountaineering. I'd never actually spent that much time in one place and in such a remote place. I'd never been on a trip where we had to carry all of our food for an entire month up to this base camp. I'd never even built a base camp before. Just a lot of things that I'd never done before, and I was kind of intrigued to try it.
That was the point when the full expedition really became a very real concept. It was something that was going to happen. We had the funding in place and our lecturers could see that we really were very serious about this.
Getting on that plane with the guys and getting into Bishkek was the first thing that made me go, oh my goodness, this is actually happening.
It all felt pretty surreal until we actually arrived in Kyrgyzstan. That's when the 5 of us were all together really properly for the first time.
So the last few days it was really, really hectic, just getting everything together.
We spent most of the time we were in Bishkek just going around markets, buying food, buying all of our supplies.
And when we were doing it, it just seemed like absurd quantities. We sort of bought a shop out of oats and they had to bring more in a wheelbarrow.
And we'd go into supermarkets and just take all of the bread and all of the sausages. And it was just an insane amount of stuff. You just think, now how can 5 people eat this much food?
The last night before the expedition, we finally got all the kit together and it just looked like a mammoth task that was ahead of us, trying to get it all up to base camp and live in the mountains for 30 days.
The task's kind of, daunting. Just got to figure out the best way to carry it all, really.
The day itself was just kind of getting every last bit ready and getting everything, checking that we've got stuff and checking again, because obviously once you're there and you don't have something, you just don't have something. You then have this time of just realising that you're finished, you're all ready and there's nothing else you can do.
I think we all went out and got a beer, had a nice kebab as our final meal, and we were definitely excited, although we were quite quiet.
Tomorrow we're heading up to the Belogorka Valley for the expedition we've been planning for the last 6 months now. It kind of feels a bit surreal that it's all happening now. It's kind of,
I think everyone was kind of in their own different headspaces. There was, people kind of calling home, messaging family, and we're all kind of doing what we needed to do to feel comfortable before leaving for a 31-day trip where we'd be on our own.
I've just been sort of finishing off packing, making sure I've got everything. I called my parents briefly just to sort of say goodbye for the next 30 days. And then, I turned my phone off basically for the last time.
I remember heading off to bed pretty late that night just because we had so much to do. But we were all very excited, and I think we're all keen to get off and see the mountains at last.
You leave the swarming city of Bishkek and get onto a very long highway that's all a bit battered, and everyone's kind of sat in this big minibus, rocking around, feeling a little bit nervous in the stomach.
I was nervous, really nervous. But yeah, it just felt so good to kind of be finally going.
Driving towards these massive mountains, we could see them in the distance, and then, you know, you started getting small hills, and then the hills got a bit bigger and a bit bigger and a bit bigger.
I can remember seeing them getting bigger through the window and thinking, wow, like this is it. It's really starting. As we wound up the valleys, thinking, right, a lot of stuff to do today, it's going to be a big day.
We get dropped off by the minibus at the roadhead, and that was another point of time where you're just kind of unpacking the minibus and seeing how much equipment that we've got and how much stuff we're going to have to then carry up this massive mountain range that we're surrounded by.
We'd obviously seen all of our kit all laid out, but I don't think we realised quite how much it was to carry until we got it all out of that bus at the end.
And it's all kind of very real at that point, and you're there, and the minibus goes, and it begins.
I'd seen a map of the walk up to Basecamp, but that definitely didn't prepare me for what it was actually like.
The days that we've spent hiking up and down this valley have proved to be very difficult.
Oh, it's horrible. It's definitely one of the hardest walks I've ever done in my life.
So I think the first few days were harder than any of us could have expected. It was incredibly challenging just because of the length and the distances and the altitude you climbed as well.
It's about 12 kilometres, going from about 2,000 metres to 3,300 metres above sea level.
Full long days, carrying really heavy packs, up hard terrain.
I honestly thought that we'd be able to do it twice in a day, and that we'd have base camp set up and sorted by day 3. How naive I was.
I mean, you start on this kind of lovely open grassy plain with horses grazing.
The trail turns into a very rough, scree slopes, and you have to cross the river at that point. And that's when you have to take your boots off and get in the water, and it's freezing cold glacier water, so you're gritting your teeth the whole way along.
We walked through a kind of jungly section through all these trees, and then got to another river crossing, and then another one, and then another one.
At this point there was some logs over the streams that you could kind of balance your way across. And then you have the start of the proper ascent. But it's steep, really, really steep. And the path becomes just massive rocks, massive loose rocks.
That was horrible to walk on. I was pretty convinced I was going to break my ankle or one of my poles.
And then at some point along this track, you have to cross the river again.
We all knew that we were all in it together. We were all carrying 25 kilos on our back.
Absolutely knackering. 2/3 of the way in, I was just like, this is too much, so I had to kind of like stash some of the fuel just so that we could make it up to the top.
I arrived at base camp after the second trip up and immediately had an asthma attack. Not a walk I want to do too many times.
I found the trek up really difficult. I started to get symptoms after sickness halfway up, which meant I had to drop a load of weight just to carry on, and that kind of really hit home how kind of challenging this environment is.
The team was really just looking out for each other, and it was just like, if one of us didn't get up this, we're all not getting up this.
And to finally find that base camp was just relief, I'd say. Just felt amazing.
Nice, made it.
But it was kind of only half relief because we had to do the trek up and down several times because we left stuff stashed at the bottom.
That took quite a while, a lot longer than we thought it would. It took until day 7 before base camp was fully established and we had everything there.
Felt very challenging, but really rewarding as well to see all the gear up here and know that we've kind of done it ourselves. And it feels good now to be set up and kind of almost ready to go and do the research.
Wow, that's an incredible feeling, just to see all the tents up here and kind of have a home up in the valley. Such a beautiful place.
It's hard to imagine kind of a place so beautiful as where base camp was. I mean, it was just in this huge open valley. You have this lovely blue stream running down the side, these towering cliffs on either side, and just these massive glaciers carving their way down from the mountains at the end of the valley.
No one else in sight. It was completely remote, apart from us and a few wild horses that would often be roaming up and down the valley.
After so many months of preparing for this, to have like this kind of scene with all the tents ready here, ready to see the research, it's hard to describe in words, you know. Just a really awesome feeling.
Start of the week was pretty grim. We spent about 3 or 4 days just sitting in the mess tent listening to the constant hammering of the rain.
That was just absolutely a bit soul destroying. Kind of sitting in the tent thinking, are we going to be able to get up to do this research?
Like, I don't think I've seen weather like it. Just rain coming down like mad, hail. We were really worried we wouldn't be able to get out. Thankfully, in the end, it did clear up and we managed to get up to the glacier, which was awesome. It's an incredible place, way better than I imagined it to be, and it's been fantastic for research as well.
So the aim of my project was basically to construct a model that could be used to work out how much glacier was going to melt in future years in relation to temperature increases. So to do that, we had to understand how temperature affected melt on the glacier on a daily basis. We basically went and put up a load of stakes in the ice. We drilled a little hole, went into the ice, and we went back each day and just measured how much snow or ice melt had happened overnight. And then we also included some temperature data loggers that went next to these stakes. And these basically just record temperature 24 hours so we could relate that to melt. Furthermore, we had this device that went in the river, and that just measured the discharge and the flow, so we could calculate how much water was being discharged from the glacier. And together, all these kind of things come together to produce a really kind of holistic understanding of how temperature affects our glacier, the Fedorovich Glacier, on a daily basis.
Broadly, my project is a longer term project, so I was looking at how the glaciers were treated over the last few hundred years, whereas Alex was looking at processes that were happening at that very time, so how the melt was changing throughout the summer season. So my research goal was to reconstruct previous glacial extent, and that involved mapping out all the different landforms of interest and figuring out how far away they were from the ice and what they were. So that really just involved having a good knowledge of glacial landforms, which we've been taught for the past year in lectures. So that was really an opportunity to take my readings and learnings from the classroom out into the field. And then secondly, I had to date the landforms that the glacier builds as it retreats backwards. And once again, it was just things that I'd really read about in papers and seen that my lecturers in the geography department had done in the past. And it was really cool to be able to get out and have the same tools and have the same materials and be able to go and do that myself.
So there were quite a few challenges to getting the data. The first of them was as soon as we walked out of Basecamp, we'd have to tackle this scree slope, which we nicknamed Punter's Commute.
And it was just walking up lots of misplaced rocks and trying not to push them off onto someone else or fall over and break your leg.
That's not something I miss about not being in Kyrgyzstan anymore. It was just not a very nice approach to anything.
You'd watch these clouds rolling in and you could see and predict that within an hour we'd be in that cloud. Really changeable, we'd get rain, snow, winds, so you had to have a storm shelter with you, and yeah, at times you just have to hunker down, and I'd be sat in there with Louise and Tom just kind of twiddling our thumbs a little bit like, oh God, you know, what now, what if this rain doesn't stop?
We were going up onto the glacier every single day, and travelling across a glacier is dangerous.
So you have problems with crevasses, which are basically just big cracks that open up in the ice as the glacier flows over bumps or stretches out due to gravity. And these crevasses can be pretty deep and you really don't want to fall into one because you can get yourself stuck down there, you break legs, so that's something we want to be really careful about.
When we first got onto the Fedorovich Glacier in the valley, that was the first glacier I'd ever been onto, so it really was quite a steep learning curve for myself. Even though I felt like I had all the individual skills there, I had never combined them all and put them into practice until we actually got there.
Not much more to say. It's just been half a week of wet, half a week of going onto the glacier.
This week has definitely been a week of properly getting into the research.
Sam and Alex both seem to have kind of nailed their methods, so it's just a case of collecting a bit more data, but everyone seems to be on track, so that's really good.
Yeah, the research has gone really well this week. Managed to get up to the 23rd moraine, so I think I'll only aim for about 7 more landforms or so.
I've been getting up to the glacier almost every day this week, and it's been a bit of a tiring one, just taking a break today, getting a bit of rest for the legs. But the glacier's looking really interesting. The snow's starting to melt, we're starting to see bare blue ice, and they're starting to get really good data.
We split off into 2 groups every day, 2 teams, one going with Alex and one going with Sam. Going with Alex was a big day out. It was climbing from 3,000 metres at the base camp to nearly 4,000 metres at the top of the glacier, and then all the way back down again. So we sort of rotated who did that.
And going on a glacier is great, but the novelty does wear off after a while. And having to be up there very early in the morning each day when it's raining, when it's windy, when the sun's out, is always kind of a tough thing to convince your team members to do and convince yourself to do as well.
And I think the hard thing for all of us was the fact that the research requires you to do it as much as possible. The more often you take the samples, the better the research will be and the better the findings will be. I think the thing that everyone found hard was just to get out there and do it, because 31 days of just knackering walking and experiencing the mountains is just so mentally challenging.
And then also combining that with quite a repetitive process meant that the last week or so was, you had to dig deep at times and just think, I'm going to get this work done today, and got to forget how long this is taking or how the data might not be looking as you'd expect.
Certainly a sense of cabin fever setting in. I think that mostly related to the food, and I think especially when we had to start having chocolate rations.
The food situation wasn't ideal.
The breakfasts were always the same, with just oats with boiling hot water splashed on top and a quick stir with some jam to sweeten it up.
Lunch was usually a salami and a wrap or some mouldy bread by the end of the trip. Dinner occasionally went okay, and most of the time didn't go that well at all. Basically just a cauldron full of mush was our dinner most days. Sometimes it was burnt, sometimes it was undercooked. Very rarely was it perfect. Chocolate was the only thing we had to look forward to, really.
It was this big moment. You were like, I'm going to have my daily chocolate, and everyone would be very excited and very jealous all at the same time.
We've had to kind of ration the chocolate bars. Turned out about 40 chocolate bars have gone missing. I don't know where they've gone. Bit suspicious of Sam. I reckon he's got a load under his pillow, but we'll have to find out. I know he loves a Twix.
The highlights of food would be the periods where you had your Twix or a Kit Kat.
I've made it through the Kit Kat ration week. Deserve this.
That was just like this sugary, nice chocolate bar that kind of reminded you of home a little bit.
Oh!
I think the key to kind of keeping ourselves entertained and focused was really in the evening just coming together as a group and forgetting about the research. We'd sit in the tents and we'd play cards, spend the night looking at the stars, and it just would remind you of how lucky we were to be in such a situation. I think also days that we scheduled to not do research and do things like climbing, they were really days that you could organise yourself around and like kind of think, all right, I'm going to really look forward to this day off and go and do something a bit different, and kind of taking a bit of time off from the everyday research was very important.
This is week 4 now. Is it week 4? Yeah, it is week 4. Cool. Week 4. Wow.
The end of this week is the end of our time as a 5 together that we've had doing our research.
And that's kind of really been one of the special things about this trip, is getting to spend time with these 4 other amazing people who've decided to come on this expedition.
Towards the end of the 3rd week, we had a high camp up on the glacier. It was kind of a bit of a celebration of the end of our research process, and then also it was the day of Tom's graduation, so that was absolutely fantastic to spend it up on top of the glacier at about 3,800 metres.
Using, I think, a sleeping bag liner, loads of gaffer tape, a bit of cardboard, and a Kyrgyz flag, we managed to make me look almost as if I was wearing a graduation gown and a mortarboard. Did a little graduation ceremony as the sun went down, made a little certificate and everything, which I now have up in my room. I have my real certificate and then my Kyrgyz certificate next to it.
It was a great way for the team to sort of go out with a bang, because we only then had one more day, all just the 5 of us.
Staying up there to watch the sunset and the sunrise was just amazing.
You could tell everybody was really loving the moment up there, and just it was something to really kind of remember, and it was a really special experience for a lot of us.
So it's now the 22nd of July, which means we've got 5 days left in this valley. It's going to be really, really weird going back to Bishkek. We've seen no one really in the entire time we've been here, so going back to a big city is going to be very strange.
For the last week of the expedition, we had what we'd called an educational week planned. So we worked with and invited a whole load of students from the American University of Central Asia to come up to our base camp.
We were following on from a project conducted by someone who'd worked at their university and getting students out into the kind of wilderness of Kyrgyzstan and educating them about their own environment and showing them the resources that they have, the natural kind of resources that they have on their doorstep.
Having 4 fresh faces in camp was brilliant, actually.
I had a girly chat with one of them for the first time in 4 weeks, and it was amazing. It was so nice. I love the guys, but sometimes you just need to break.
We'd been there by ourselves 3.5 weeks, sort of having these incredible experiences, doing this incredible work, and it was great to actually share it.
Getting them excited about the glaciers in their country and the challenges that those glaciers face was just really important.
It was just really nice to see people of all abilities and experiences come up and do something new and have completely different challenges, but all absolutely smash it and have an amazing time.
They were their own group of AUCA students, but by the end I think we were a team ourselves and everyone was really working together well. Everyone can come away from it saying they were friends, I think.
I think it's fair to say by the last few weeks we were actually all quite excited to come back.
Towards the end of the trip, I was kind of counting down the days. I was really looking forward to getting home.
I was just so ready for some convenience. I don't think I've ever been more excited about a supermarket existing. I was very ready to come down and just have some vegetables, like, oh my goodness, vegetables, I've missed those.
But at the same time, it was also quite sad to leave the glacier for the last time. And I'd have liked to see how it responded over the kind of following few weeks. Just taking all that stuff out and leaving the valley how it was a really kind of interesting and odd thing to see.
It was weird packing up Basecamp. That was just, like, we'd obviously been there for a month. It was just very strange packing it all up and walking down with it.
We'd packed everything away and this base camp area that we'd called home for 4 weeks was now just the same valley that it was before. It was just kind of an empty space.
Kind of mixed emotions. I'm glad to be going home and getting fresh food and be able to just kind of get back into normal life, but yeah, just kind of sinking in that we won't be able to be waking up at with these incredible views, and yeah, I think it's yeah, definitely a mixed feeling.
So now that I'm back and I've started looking at the data, but already some things are standing out. Just looking at the photos from the expedition, we can see the huge transition from the first week to the last week, where the snow is all melted off and you can just see the bare blue ice, and that kind of initial response just shows that something's been happening. Overall, looking at the data, I think we can see a trend with temperature and melt, so that's been very visible. And furthermore, there were also some very interesting aspects which we noticed on the ice. Quite unique to this glacier, I believe, these kind of very parallel lines forming ice, and the researchers at Sheffield have been quite interested to look at those.
So I think what I'm finding at the minute with my data is that I'm able to pull out these landform ages that are enabling me to reconstruct the glacial retreat and figure out how quickly it was moving backwards at certain periods of time. If you can generalise the findings for the one glacier we were focusing on to the glaciers in the area, you should be able to kind of make some general predictions of when these glaciers will be gone.
And this is really vital in Kyrgyzstan, because I think all of their water, it's one of the only countries in Central Asia where all of their water comes from the internal mountains. So by understanding that, we can get an idea of how the retreat of the glaciers might affect water resources. And that includes farming, drinking water, and manufacturing, and that's all vital to the Kyrgyz economy.
As a student, to have followed through this really kind of detailed research approach and go through every single step of collecting data in the field to coming back home and working on it, it's really just encompassing for me what university is about. It's like having questions and trying to find answers for them.
So as a whole, I found the whole trip really rewarding. If someone had told me at the beginning of my degree that I was going to go and do a trip to Kyrgyzstan, and not just that, but a student organised expedition, then yeah, I probably would have said absolutely no way.
But of course we made it happen. We planned and prepared for the expedition successfully. We were able to carry out all the data collection, and we all got back safely.
Having not that much experience and do some really important research was incredible. And to come back from that and look back and say, I've done this incredible thing and I'm very capable of it, was amazing. But one of the really exciting things is to go into a lecture on glaciers and then sit in it and then discuss all of these things, and me just think, I've done that. I've seen this, I know what's going on.
I think part of me still wants to be back in Kyrgyzstan because there's something very special and unique, not just about doing the research, but just about being out there. We were quite unsure before we started the expedition how hard it was going to be, how easy it was going to be for us to run an expedition, and it's something that I've never done before, neither has Sam, and we were quite anxious whether we'd actually be able to pull it off.
And now looking back, it kind of just seems like, I think the idea, albeit a little bit crazy, kind of came together with a bit of hard work and kind of determination. It really shows where an idea can go.